What is up, folks? Today's video is all about the current trend in high intensity interval training. You know the sort of thing I'm talking about, the body coach, Kayla Eat Scenes for F45, whether it's a home or internet-based program or in the gym. It's something that's trending massively now. It's on point, it's fashionable, everybody wants a slice of it. That being said, this video may divide a few of you on that because it's not just about blind exercise. HIIT has upsides and downsides. What I'm going to try and do in this video is explain to you the good parts, but also explain to you the bad parts that I think are massively missed. There's a lot of people out there trying to make money from these online programs with an accessible training approach like HIIT that may be leading you down the wrong path that could lead to a negative place. I'm going to try and give you both sides of the story here to allow you to make your own judgment on how to use it, how much to use it, what kind to do. So to start up, we're going to talk about the positive sides of high intensity interval training. For those of you who don't know what it is, I'm going to give you a brief outline. We're talking about, the high output, short time period kind of training you may do at home. Something like the Joe Wicks style approach, lots of jumping around, bouncing about, high intensity exercises, burpees, mountain climbers, squat jumps, etc. Now, it does get you working, it gets you out of breath, it gets you sweating, but it's not all good. That being said, we're going to start with the good stuff. So first up, movement. The great thing about something like high intensity interval training is that it is getting you moving. Joe Wicks especially got the nation off their ass. There was a lot of people sitting down who didn't want to go to the gym, whether that was a willing thing or it was a time thing. They were doing nothing. They would rather sit in front of the television in the morning or in the evening and do nothing than exercise. Joe Wicks style high intensity exercise got people off their ass, it got them moving, it got them working hard, which is phenomenal. So for that, HIIT is extremely effective because it's so accessible. When you're moving more, you are burning more calories. When you are burning more calories, potentially you are going to get a little bit leaner. This is a very good thing for many reasons. From a mental health standpoint, you feel better about yourself, you have more confidence, but also with lower levels of body fat to a point, there's a damn good chance that physiologically you are a lot healthier. When you are lean and inflammation is likely lower, which is a great side effect of good exercise, you are going to be less susceptible to many different chronic illnesses and diseases. It's going to improve your heart health. It's going to improve respiratory health. It's potentially, in the short term, going to improve your immune system. All of these things are a great side effect of moving more, burning a few more calories. By reducing inflammation, there's a potential that any kind of niggling injuries, especially weight-associated injuries, may start to go away. Great if you've had issues with your knees, your ankles, for instance, because you are carrying maybe more body fat than you should. Maybe you weren't eating as healthily as you were and you weren't moving well, so your body was not in a good place. These niggling injuries that have hung around for a very long time may start to dissipate as you lose weight, which is extremely positive for you and for activities day to day. If your back has got better because you are slightly stronger, you're able to play with your children, you're able to spend more time with your family, doing more active activities. There's a knock-on effect to being physically more fit and more healthy. The reason that HIIT style training got so popular is that it is unbelievably accessible to everybody. Now, of course, weight training, which the majority of people know is the most effective way to lose fat and get in shape, is not something that everybody wants to do because they may not feel comfortable inside a gym. Totally okay, gyms can be intimidating places. Obviously, you always want to try and choose the right gym for you and for your goals, but they can be intimidating. Not only that, but getting to and from the gym takes time. Potentially they could be busy at certain times of year. You may want a quiet gym, but you can't get there at that time. It's just generally a bit inconvenient unless you have that bug. HIIT style training is very accessible in that you can do it in your garden, you can do it at a gym if you want, you can do it in a boot camp style class, you can go to somewhere like F45 and do it en masse, you can do it in your living room, you can do it in your bedroom, you can do it in your hotel room. There is no excuse when it comes to HIIT style training, there is no excuse not to train. It's extremely accessible. It's also very time efficient, which is great for most people, especially in this day and age when the majority of us are worried about how much time we have. We have busy lives, we have families, we have overtime to do at work, we have big projects to manage. HIIT is a very, very accessible and very, very time efficient way to train, because in 20 to 30 minutes, you can get an extremely intense and effective workout done. You feel great for it. There's a lot to be said for that. Because of that positive feeling, it's going to reinforce a state of good mental health. You are doing something with your day. You are exercising. When you are exercising, again, as we said, inflammation comes down, neurotransmitters potentially, certainly in the short term, can improve. So you're more energized, you're potentially more productive. All of these things make you feel better. The fact that you are exercising is going to make you feel good about yourself. Potentially your body shape is changing as well. So the small insecurities that you feel about maybe carrying a little excess fat or not being muscular here or there can improve with high intensity interval style training. Very, very efficient, effective, makes you feel better about everything you do day to day. It's also very, very exciting, and because you are sweating, because you are working hard, that gives the impression that it is highly effective. Irrelevant of whether it is or not, the fact that you work hard for that period of time certainly leads people to believe that they are doing something extremely effective for their body. Exercise is great anyway, but of course they are not all equal. Some forms of exercise are considerably more effective in the grand scheme of things than others. But HIIT, because it is so brutal, because it's so high intensity and can really take it out of you in the short term, the mental aspect of that, training hard, gives you a massive endorphin rush. You feel phenomenal for it. All of these things contribute to a knock-on to improved habits in the rest of your life. It could mean that because you are exercising on the regular, you're maybe going out a little bit less and drinking a little bit less alcohol. It could mean that you're eating more vegetables. It could mean that you're eating more protein. It could mean that you're tidying your diet up elsewhere. Because you're feeling better about yourself, maybe you're doing more external activities because you have better energy. You are feeling fitter, feeling stronger. So instead of sitting on your ass on a Sunday, you decide to go rock climbing or bike riding or something like that. There are echoes in the rest of your life that can be a residual effect of exercising in a controlled manner, something like HIIT or gym work, specifically HIIT that we're talking about in this video. These things are great because one small action can set off a cascade of great habits which improve your life no end. Finally, it can be very, very social. Because high intensity interval training, because it's not an equipment based form of training, it can mean that you can do it with friends, you can do it with a partner, you can even do it with your kids. But the social aspect of these kind of things brings you together with other people with like-minded goals, like-minded thought processes, and it's a phenomenal thing. When you're surrounded by the right people, this is going to change your life, more so than any other aspect of your life. You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time around. If you're around 5 lazy dicks, you are going to become the 6th lazy dick. If you are around 5 highly motivated, highly productive, fit, well-trained people, the chances are you are going to become the 6th. So because HIIT is so accessible, so many people are doing it, it's really trending right now, it's extremely social. So all in all, HIIT is a very, very good way to train. However, we are all getting sucked into it as a training modality without considering the realistic parts of it. Now, this is going to come down to many things. Largely, the people who are promoting high intensity interval training are not necessarily the best coaches in the world, which means they are not thinking clearly, or potentially they don't know about the knock-on effects to certain actions. It's not about what we are doing now. It's not about calories in, calories out. It's not about just burning calories. There are knock-on effects to every action we take that will echo 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 6 years down the line that need to be accounted for when programming some form of exercise. So that with the good said, I'm going to go through the negative stuff to allow you to kind of make your decision and decide how to use it slightly more responsibly than I think maybe it is being portrayed in the media at the moment. There are a lot of personalities out there who aren't necessarily good personal trainers or good trainers or coaches who are excellent on camera or who are excellent marketers, making you fall for something that may not necessarily be good for you. So the negative sides. First up, the starting point of the person doing it. HIIT is extremely accessible and extremely fashionable right now, but every single person starting a high intensity interval style training program, this kind of stuff you see on YouTube, are at different starting points. Okay, this means that somebody with bad knees, bad ankles, 150 kilos overweight, highly inflamed, who's not really exercised enough before, goes immediately into a high impact style training program, often based in plyometrics, high output. This is extremely dangerous. Really, 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 really dangerous. The starting point of each individual going into something like HIIT needs to be accounted for in some way. Now, great, some programs out there may have regressions and progressions, which are absolutely vital. But by its nature, high intensity interval training, especially the kind of stuff that you do at your living room, at home, or in a hotel room, can be very, very dangerous if you don't have some level of structural integrity as it is. This leads me on to the next point. Impact. Repetitive impact, the jumping, the burpees, the jump squats, the lunges, the side squats, whatever it happens to be. It's very, very difficult to create a variation in exercise on something like a HIIT program that keeps the user, you, engaged. This means that there is repetition of certain types of exercise, and the only real progression for those exercises are more explosive versions of it. This means that almost certainly, and there'll probably be a bunch of you watching this who've done these kind of programs in the past nodding here, almost certainly you are going to end up with excessive tension in your plantar fascia. So the bottoms of your feet are likely to start collapsing over time because there's a lot of jumping around, there's excessive tension turning up in a plantar fascia, and very often there are no measures to prevent that. This means that your ankles are going to start to get extremely tight, your ankles and your calves and your soleus, so the muscles below the knee will start to tighten up massively. When they tighten up massively and the ankle stops moving properly, you're also going to get issues in your knees, okay? Because we have an unstable joint that tightens up, means that the stable joint above it is going to have to compensate somehow. This becomes a real problem. So a lot of you out there who've done these kind of high intensity interval training style workouts probably have bad knees after a certain amount of time. Don't get me wrong, it can happen in any training modality, but it's much, much more common in HIIT style programs. This again will have a knock-on effect to your hip, to your back, to your shoulders, to your neck. The constant impact is going to cause you a lot of problems. Now, a lot of you may have heard, even with running, every time your heel strikes the floor, because of the velocity of your body, you are looking at about 3 G's worth of force. So for instance, I'm about 100 kilos. So every time my heel strikes the floor when I run or when I jump, we're looking at about 300 kilograms, so they say, of force going through my leg. Now, in an acute term, in the short term, that's possibly not a bad thing because it's going to help to increase my bone density, it's going to increase stability, support. However, when it is repetitive and recovery becomes an issue, we have problems, okay? So the impact is also going to be a huge factor, not only your starting point, but the repetitive impact of that nature of training program. The progression. You have a very, very clear ceiling that you can hit whilst doing HIIT because there's only so much jumping around you can do before your body is going to adapt to it. This again is why a gym program where you can constantly increase weight lifted, you can change multiple variables is always going to be favorable, not only in the short term for results and safety, but also for longevity and sustainability. This unfortunately doesn't occur with HIIT because yes, you may get a result immediately, but after a while you're going to run out of ways to progress and your body is infinitely adaptive. It will adapt to whatever demands you put on it. Once it's hit a point where it no longer needs to adapt, it will probably start to regress to a point of efficiency. This is very, very common with HIIT style programs. Now, I use the word program there. Again, dependent on the coach, or dependent on the trainer, or dependent on the personality that is giving you these programs and selling you these programs, you are almost certainly not following a program. It is not a balanced program. It is not about creating a certain level of structural stability and structural balance on the body. There's an awful lot of pushing, an awful lot of jumping, which usually is going to favor the anterior of the body, the front of the body, which is a problem because on the whole, throughout our lives, we have constantly tightened up the front of our body, leaving the back of our body weaker, lengthened, unstable, which is why almost all of us end up with back problems, neck problems, shoulder problems, etc. Because we are too strong and too tight through the front, we are too weak through the back, okay? HIIT programs, because they are not programmed properly or with any real thought process in mind, tend to exacerbate this issue rather than fix it. And this has a major knock-on effect to your susceptibility to injury. Now, we move on to the main factor with excessive HIIT training in this current trend where everybody is doing loads of it. And that is your stress hormones, cortisol. There is a lack of recovery involved in this type of training because it is very, very taxing, not only to the muscular system, but also to the nervous system and to the hormonal system. Now, stress is a good thing. An elevated level of cortisol in the short term is a good thing. We need that. It's our fight or flight response. When things are going wrong, when something is hard and very, very challenging, We get a release of cortisol, which is going to stimulate the brain to react faster and think better. It's going to stimulate the muscles in order to, again, work better and to potentially fight or run from whatever acute stress we have. Now, this will also take blood away from the digestive system because we need it elsewhere. It takes blood and it takes nutrients away from non-essential processes like digestion and sends it elsewhere in order for you to react in that short term. Now, stress is elevated, cortisol is elevated based on the stress that you are encountering, and it is elevated, supposed to be elevated, for the amount of time necessary for you to deal with that stress. Then it should subside and return to normal. All of the processes carry on as they are. The problem with that is that in this day and age, we are highly stressed emotionally, physically, from training. We may not be sleeping well enough. We are probably not eating right, or we're taking lots of coffee, stimulants. We are stimulated by the screens that we look at. We are stimulated by our kids, by our relationships, by our emotions, by atmospheric stresses. All of these things now have disrupted the way our body uses cortisol and reacts to cortisol. So for a lot of us, it's chronically high. High intensity interval training creates a greater stress upon the body, and especially when it's done too often or in excess, that chronic stress remains elevated. The cortisol remains circulating constantly. Instead of going up and down based on the amount of stress that it's been put under and reducing as soon as it's finished, it is chronically high. This is a massive problem. Why? Because instead of it being a good thing, short-term elevated stress or cortisol can be a fat burner and a muscle builder, and it can make you stronger. When it is chronic, it promotes fat storage. It promotes muscle breakdown, and when you have less muscle, you have a slower metabolism, which is going to have a knock-on effect to your body's ability to burn fat. Okay, so you may find at a point, even though you're still exercising, if recovery is not adequate, you've started to break muscle tissue down and gain fat, even though you feel like you're doing everything right. This is a good sign that this thing is kind of, you've gone past the point of no return on it and things need to change. It increases cellular inflammation to a certain point, which is then, instead of combating poor health, is likely to start promoting poor health. Your immune system is going to be diminished somewhat. You're going to be more susceptible to illnesses. You're going to be potentially promoting the onset of chronic diseases later down the line. Elevated cortisol for too long can also mess around with your insulin sensitivity, which has a knock-on effect to your body's ability to send nutrients to the right place again, which can cause fat storage as opposed to fat burning, despite you eating as well as you think you need to eat and training as much as you think you need to train. These things tend to have a knock-on effect because when it stops working for you, instead of backing off as you should, you actually try to do more of the thing that has caused the problem in the first place. As I mentioned a minute ago, it can result in blood being taken away from the gut. Now, when cortisol is elevated, the gut is going to start sustaining some level of damage, because when cortisol is high, your body stops producing digestive enzymes properly. When it stops producing digestive enzymes, you're not breaking down the foods that you need to break down in order to be well nourished. Even if you are eating well, you are probably not taking in the nutrients from those foods in order to help your body work optimally. It's also probably going to result in bloating, water retention, symptoms of IBS, things like that. Okay, again, a lot of you out there might be starting to make connections now, thinking, shit, okay, this makes sense. Maybe I'm doing something a little bit off here. That lack of nutrients is going to result in poor hormonal health. Cortisol is going to go high, which is going to steal a hormone called pregnenolone, which helps to make all of the other hormones. So for instance, men out there, when your cortisol is high, your testosterone is going to drop. Now, what you'll hear when HIIT is advertised is that it elevates testosterone. Yes, potentially when controlled in the short term, it can. But if you're doing too much of it, it's going to reduce your testosterone because cortisol is high. The same applies with females. It's going to reduce your testosterone, which is going to affect your mood. It's going to affect your sex drive, but it's also going to play havoc with your reproductive system. Okay, so you may find that if you've been doing HIIT for too long, you are going to lose your period. Okay, which in the short term, sometimes it happens and it's very, very easily repaired. However, if it happens in the long term, it can cause permanent damage to your reproductive system. So excessive high intensity interval training, as it is trending now, yes, it's fashionable and yes, it's cool and yes, it looks great on your social media, but it could be affecting your ability to have children later down the line. Of course, that is an extreme an extreme case, but it happens. It genuinely does happen. And these things need to be controlled. But of course, when people are selling you their products and their online plans, they are not advertising the dangers of them. This is what this video is for. All of the above, elevated cortisol, poor hormonal issues, the fact that you're going to be feeling like shit, are going to affect your sleep. which is then going to have a knock-on effect to your recovery. So you see how poor recovery is going to affect your ability to then sleep and recover properly. It's a really, really nasty cycle. When your cortisol levels go through the roof, it's a very, very bad cycle, and trying to break that cycle is extremely difficult. Okay, so high intensity interval training, yes, it is trendy. Yes, it is fashionable right now. Yes, it is accessible and easy to you. And yes, it is enjoyable. However, it is not all good. You have to consider your starting point. You have to consider the impact and longevity and progression and the knock-on effect to your cortisol levels, which is going to cause an already stressful life more stress, which is going to reduce your recovery, which is potentially going to affect your sex hormones, sex drive, your moods, your motivation, your ability to do other things, your productivity. It's not all good, okay? Now, of course, it's really easy for me to say the good sides and the bad sides, but how should you genuinely be using it? High intensity interval training can be great as a supplementary add-on to a weight training program. And of course, loads of you out there are going to say, yeah, but I don't want to weight train. Stop trying to make me weight train. That's cool. If you don't want to weight train, don't weight train. Do whatever makes you happy. Just understand that you need to control it. In an ideal world, what you should be doing is 2 to 3 hard weight training sessions a week that last no more than an hour, and then 1 to 2 high intensity interval training sessions per week that last no longer than 20 minutes. You are in and you are out. It's also important, no matter what you are doing, that you're monitoring your recovery factors, that you understand that I need to look out for certain things to figure out whether this is good for me or bad for me. If you're doing HIIT only, I would say maximum 3 times per week. Maximum 3 times per week, and see how you recover. But again, we're still talking 20 to 30 minutes at the absolute most. If, however, you're doing weight training, 1 to 2 sessions of HIIT per week to keep your condition up is more than enough. Understand that there are 2 sides to every story. And you all know me by now, hopefully if you're watching this channel, that I don't tell you what you want to hear, even though it would probably sell way more of what I want to sell to you. I tell you what you need to hear, because that is what matters, and my integrity is more important to me than your money coming into me. Okay, so understand there are 2 sides to every coin. When people are selling you these really trendy training approaches, they are only showing you one side of that coin, and you have to be critical and think logically about the other side before it becomes an absolute nightmare for you and you pass a point of no return. That's HIIT in a nutshell, and why it may not be everything you think it is. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments box below and I will be happy to answer them. I'm not trying to pick on anybody here. I'm not trying to pick on anyone selling programs, whether that be F45, whether that be Joe Wicks, whether that be Kayla Itzines, whatever. What I'm asking you to do is critically understand the 2 sides to the story and to understand what is right for you, and that there may be a better way. If you love HIIT, awesome, keep doing it because it's getting you moving. If, however, any of the symptoms that I've mentioned today have rung true with you, maybe change things up a little bit and understand that this is something that is going to happen. High intensity interval training has benefits, absolutely, but potentially, if used incorrectly, the negative sides are far, far greater and have far bigger repercussions to you.